we want to get to some breaking news right now. Within the last half hour, a big decision by the Illinois Supreme Court. Justices have reversed the conviction of actor Jussie Smollett.
Breaking news, the Illinois Supreme Court just ruled on the case of Jussie Smollett.
The Illinois Supreme Court ruled in favor of Jussie Smollett.
And we're following breaking news. The Illinois Supreme Court has just overturned Empire actor Jussie Smollett's conviction.
So, Empire actor Jussie Smollett's conviction has been overturned because of a technicality. Let me explain why. So this is the Illinois Supreme Court's overturning of the Jussie Smollett conviction. Now, I'm going to shock a lot of you. I agree with the Illinois Supreme Court. Their overturning of this conviction was the right thing to do. Now, before you jump down my throat, let me explain why. So first, let's start with why was Jussie Smollett appealing his conviction?
Good morning. Well, Jussie Smollett's legal challenges continue as an Illinois appeals court. Here's oral arguments today that the former Empire TV star's conviction for staging a racist, homophobic attack on himself back in 2019 and then lying to police about it should be thrown out. Now, in the lengthy written appeal, Smollett's attorneys claim that his conviction violated his Fifth Amendment rights against double jeopardy. You may know that double jeopardy is a legal protection which keeps people from being punished for the same crime twice. The special prosecutor disagrees.
So Jussie Smollett's appeal hinges on the Fifth Amendment's prohibition against double jeopardy. That essentially means you can't be punished for the same crime twice. So, as always, let's start with the facts. Now, unless you've been living under a rock, Jussie Smollett was found guilty of staging a hate crime against himself, and he was sentenced to 150 days in jail and 2.5 years of probation. So, first, let's talk about what happened. On January 29th, 2019, actor Jussie Smollett reported being attacked by two men on a Chicago street at 2 a.m. in the morning. Now, it's important to understand that this was one of the coldest nights on record in Chicago. Here's a news report.
I'm Brant Miller. Here's the overnight update of the forecast on NBCChicago.com. You could still see a couple of flurries tomorrow. Look at that air temperature. 1 below zero for the high temperature. Tomorrow night into Wednesday morning, 23 below. Not wind chill, air temperature. Wednesday's high temperature, 15 below zero. 25 below the air temperature Wednesday night into Thursday. Dangerous cold. Check on your neighbors.
Now, after an exhaustive police investigation, the police found that Jussie had hired two men to stage a hate crime against himself, and he actually paid them with a check. Now, Jussie was eventually charged with filing a false police report, and he was arrested by the Chicago Police Department. The elected prosecutor, Kim Foxx, who was close personal friends with the Smollett family, messaged the Smolletts, advising Jussie to be quiet and stay consistent.
Showed that Smollett's sister and Fox were in communication, and Fox says, your brother should be fine as long as he stays consistent. How does she stay in the job after this?
Now, after that revelation that the elected prosecutor was helping the defendant try to stay out of trouble, on February 19th, 2019, State's Attorney Kim Foxx recused herself.
Then the controversial Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx recused herself. Her office issued this statement. Out of an abundance of caution, the decision to recuse herself was made to address potential questions of impartiality based upon familiarity with potential witnesses in this case. And there was confirmation that Smollett pleaded no contest back in 2007 in Los Angeles to a DUI, providing false information to police and driving without a license.
Now, this is where things get interesting. See, Fox knows she can't actually dispose of this case after she recused herself. Now, how do we know she knows that for a fact? Well, because her team advised her that, yes, when you recuse yourself, you can't do anything else with the Jussie Smollett case. It has to be a special prosecutor. Here is those emails.
The supervisor of the Criminal Appeals Division looked at the legal angle and wrote to office brass, my conclusion from all of these authorities is that while the state's attorney has the complete discretion to recuse herself from any matter, she cannot simply direct someone, even the first assistant, to act in her stead.
A real recusal under Illinois law means that the case would be in somebody else's hands, outside of that office, outside of her, and that's not what happened.
So what did Kim Foxx do? Well, she simply ignored the law. Fox actually went as far as to create a fake position and appoint one of her first deputies to that position to prosecute Smollett. Kim Fox's office on March 26, 2019 dropped all the charges against Smollett, and then she claimed that $10,000 fine that she ordered Smollett to pay for restitution was all that she can get back. It was the maximum. That Smollett had no criminal background, but we know that's false because of the California DWI case, and that the evidence wasn't strong enough to obtain a conviction. So these were the reasons why Kim Fox said, hey, we're just going to drop all the charges and just get the $10,000 back. Now, an investigation found that all of these excuses were actually untrue. They were lies that Kim Fox was trying to put forward to help Jussie Smollett get off. Here it is.
The report found misleading and false statements by the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, like there were 5,700 similar cases, but the special prosecutor found few examples of similar cases, that $10,000 would be the maximum he could be asked to pay, but Smollett could be forced to pay restitution to the city. That Smollett had no criminal background was not true. He had a DUI in which he lied and got 24 months probation. And that there were evidentiary problems with the case. But the special prosecutor found in interviews, like an interview Kim Fox did with ABC 7, where she said they had a solid case against Smollett.
I cannot ask Mr. Smollett to forfeit his $10,000 bond if I didn't believe we could meet our ethical burden in this case.
Now, we're at the place where Kim Fox didn't have any authority to make any deal. She knows that because the attorneys in her office told her you don't have the authority after you recused yourself. But she makes the deal anyway. And listen to Jussie Smollett. He's going to say exactly what Kim Fox told him to say. Stay consistent.
To know that not for a moment was it in vain. I've been truthful and consistent on every single level since day one. I would not be my mother's son if I was capable of one drop of what I've been accused of.
So the fix was in, and Jussie was going to walk free. Now, the deal between the defense team and the state's attorney's office was that they drop all the charges, Smollett would perform something like 2 days of community service, and that he would forfeit his $10,000 bond. Now, this also allowed Smollett to be able to claim his innocence, since he didn't have to plead to anything, and the case was essentially dismissed. Now, here is Jussie Smollett's lawyer claiming that there was absolutely no deal, and Jussie just gave the money to the prosecutor's office in the city because he's a good person. Check it out.
Handling the case.
Now, the prosecutor's office says that the charges were dropped in exchange for your client's agreement to forfeit $10,000 that he had paid in a bond and to do community service. Is that correct? Were those conditions on his dismissal of charges?
There were no conditions, and obviously there was no plea, there was no agreement in place. They did want him to forfeit the bond, and that's something that we discussed with him, and he initially struggled with because he didn't want the perception to be that he had done anything wrong. But at the end of the day, forfeiting $10,000 versus putting your life on hold for a year was a small cost to pay.
So Jussie walked free, and there was no deal, and it was all good in the world. So then the Illinois court system stepped in and said, well, hold on. Kim Fox, you recused yourself, so that means you don't have any authority to make any deal. No one in your office has the authority to make any deal. So unfortunately, the deal that you made with Jussie Smollett, that is null and void. We are going to prosecute him with a special prosecutor.
State's Attorney Fox recused herself from the case and then dropped the charges. Today, veteran County Judge Michael Tooman unleashing this rabid order against Fox, suggesting her communication with Smollett's family and friends might also be indicative of bias. Tooman concluding Fox ignored standard recusal procedures by turning over the case to a top assistant. His appointment was to an entity that did not exist.
This really takes this prosecutor to task and effectively says there's a statute here, there's a law here that governs how these things are supposed to happen, and you didn't follow it, and now I'm going to make you follow it.
So now we have a very interesting situation that's kind of developed. Kim Fox, knowing she doesn't have authority to prosecute Jussie Smollett, prosecutes him anyway and gives him a sweetheart deal. Then the courts come and say, hey, listen, you never had authority to make that deal, so that deal is no good. This is not double jeopardy. You're making a deal with somebody who literally doesn't have authority to make any deals. But you also now have to look at this from Smollett's side, because he's detrimentally relied on that deal. He's actually done the community service. He's paid the fine. He's essentially done everything the state has told him to do to resolve this case. So should he be punished again for the state not being able to get it together, or who's got the authority to prosecute him?
Judge Tooman said the problem boiled down to Kim Foxx's decision to appoint this man, Cook County State's Attorney Joseph Magatz, to take her place after she recused herself. Simply put, that was wrong. She had no authority to do that. She appointed Magatz to, quote, a fictitious office having no legal existence. He said a special prosecutor is needed to, quote, restore the public's confidence in the integrity of our criminal justice system.
So now we can fast forward. Jussie Smollett then had to go through a trial with a special prosecutor. He was convicted, sent to jail, released from jail, and then appealed, claiming again that, hey, this was his Fifth Amendment violation. He had already done his time. Why should he be punished again? Now, we have to understand the Constitution of the United States protects the defendant's rights. It doesn't really protect the rights of the state. It protects the rights of the defendant, right to remain silent, right to an attorney, so forth and so forth. And in this case, the Illinois Supreme Court said, well, we're going to go to first principles. Let's look at this, just like any other case, and protect the rights of the defendant in this case. And in this instance, it's Jussie Smollett. So, in looking at it from protecting the defendant's rights, this defendant has nothing to do with who has authority to do what. This defendant goes to the court. There's someone stands on this and says, I'm the prosecutor. The judge accepts that they're the prosecutor. They enter into an agreement. Jussie goes and pays the money, does the community service. He serves the time that he was required to serve under the agreement. So at this point, Jussie Smollett has detrimentally relied on this agreement. So here's exactly what the court said. Regardless, even if we accept Judge Tooman's reasoning that the original proceedings were void because there was no state's attorney, when those proceedings took place, the effect on the defendant is exactly the same. He performed his end of the agreement and forfeited $10,000. If the previous proceedings were null and void, the defendant could rightfully wonder what happened to his $10,000. We specifically held in Stapninsky that it was not important whether the cooperation agreement that the defendant entered into with the state was valid, as an unauthorized promise may be enforced on due process grounds if, and this is the key point, a defendant's reliance on the promise has constitutional consequences. The court goes on to say here, defendant entered into the agreement with a full-time licensed attorney of the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, who even if they did not have actual authority, that's the key point, unquestionably had apparent authority, meaning the defendant was fooled. I think that guy's the attorney. The judge is saying he's the state's attorney. My attorney's saying he's the state's attorney. He's saying he's the state's attorney. That's apparent authority. And the defendant relied on that agreement to his detriment because he went to jail, paid the fine, did the community service. We have already held that his reliance had constitutional consequences. Now, the court concludes with this, what I think sums it up all nicely. Nevertheless, what would be more unjust than the resolution of any one criminal case would be a holding from this court that the state was not bound to honor agreements on which people have detrimentally relied. So what this comes down to is the state Supreme Court is saying, hey, we understand a whole bunch of BS went on. We understand that this person probably didn't have authority. But when you're standing in that courtroom as a defendant and you got a licensed attorney on that other side claiming to be the prosecutor, the judge calling the prosecutor, and you make an agreement with them and then do what you said you were going to do, fulfill your part of the agreement to your detriment, the state can't say, oh, we messed up, we're going to do it again. If the state made a mistake, it's the state who pays the price, not the defendant. Now, the key point here is if Jussie Smollett did not pay the money and do the community service, we'd have a different case because he wouldn't have detrimentally relied. But since he did, since he fulfilled his obligation, then it's over. Sour grapes, kick rocks, and you should be going after the state prosecutor who did all this. Now, I know a lot of people out there hate Jussie Smollett like I do. I think he should be doing years in prison. But this is the right decision, people. Just like in the Bill Cosby case, which they cite in the decision, this is the right decision. It's not the defendant's fault that the state can't get their crap together. And if this was anybody else, I'd be saying the same exact thing. Even though it happened to this horrible person, but you know, this whole, I got a fake prosecutor there, and then it's not the real prosecutor, but everybody thinks it's the real prosecutor. That's not the defendant's fault. It's just not the defendant's fault. And he did what they said he was going to do. Now, do I think this is justice? No. I don't think this is justice for what happened, but I think this is justice for this issue. He detrimentally relied. And to that, they should dismiss his case. Tell me where I'm wrong in the comment section. Tell me you disagree. But I would say this. If you were in court and the prosecutor and you come to an agreement and you paid the fine and then 5 years later they said, we want to get the max sentence now because that guy actually wasn't really the prosecutor, I think you'd have a beef with that too. And I think a legitimate beef. And like the court said, at this point, it's a constitutional problem. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe, do all that great YouTube stuff. Again, tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me where I'm wrong. My name is Nate the Lawyer. I'm out. Peace.